So we had the dirt at my house, which is pretty central in Longfellow, which worked out really well. And then Audrey volunteered her house where we met in the garage, and we did some pre-assembly in a very socially distanced and masked way. Also, we tried to do things by family units if we could. So then I brought my family unit of 4 along when I needed the help. So that was the big news of it. Incredibly enough, we sold out again, and we actually oversold.
Yes.
Here's Bruce and Aggie. Hi.
Aggie.
You're just in time for the Chard Your Yard recap.
Hi, Aggie.
Can she hear us?
They're still connecting the audio.
We're still connecting. Okay. Hey, Bruce. Hey. Oh, maybe he can't hear me yet.
Elizabeth, since I think they've heard the Chard Your Yard, so maybe.
Okay, I'll just keep going. Sorry. So the big news is we sold out, and we actually oversold, meaning we had extra lumber.
We were able to sell 1 garden bed without dirt to
not installed.
So
we
were able to get an extra bed.
Oh, was it installed? Did they install it anyways? I think you might have installed it.
I was on that team where I biked with Uncle Will.
Did you install it?
Yeah.
So it was installed, just no dirt.
Yeah.
For a total of 30, I think it was 6 double high. Is it 6 or was it? No, I think it was 6. We accidentally sold too many of those too.
I'm not sure.
And then I think we had 4 of the low income subsidized beds that we get support. Both those and the double income we get support from the LCC.
The double high, not
double
income.
Double income.
Double high, yeah, the double high ones, yeah.
I'm not used to talking to people. So.
We all kind of getting out of.
We were camping, and I haven't really had any. We were camping all last week, and I haven't had any meetings yet this week, so I'm very unaccustomed to verbalizing. Sorry.
All right.
So next year we will need to figure out a new lumber company.
The Hiawatha Lumber, it closed.
Our location.
Yeah. Is the one in Northeast still open?
I think so. But we'll figure that out.
Bruce.
Yeah. If you can hear us. I don't know if you can. But we'll just keep moving here. We've got time to figure that out.
Yes.
I know we will.
And we also completed it in record time for COVID time. We were actually expecting to go a lot longer, since it would be harder for everyone to get their volunteer teams together and take turns going to the beds to install and put in dirt and all that stuff. But we actually overcompensated for that because we finished in under a week without volunteers.
I turned the volume up and then I clicked so that the volume thing would go away.
All right, Bruce, we can hear you. We can
hear you now, Bruce.
Audio.
Can you hear us?
The visual.
I don't think
so.
Is it down here?
So that's our update.
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm really curious about Chard Your Yard for next year, given the new, structure of everything. How many you think we could possibly do if we really put our minds to it? How many garden beds do you think would be possible for us to do kind of with this spread out time frame? It seems to me like that just dramatically expands the capacity a lot.
Yeah, it could potentially. I think we just started to touch upon the possibilities. We had already figured out that we weren't doing any additional work because we're only filling the bucket once, whether you're going from the big dirt pile or whether you're going from the pile in the back of the truck. You take out the step of filling the trucks, and you also
it completely eliminates the need of the bobcat, which actually reduces the prices a lot,
right,
because that's expensive to rent.
So the one thing that we're limited to would be another space like mine to put a big thing of dirt. We might be able to space it out more and do it twice, but those costs for the lumber and the dirt are fixed, and they do include delivery costs too. But we're definitely going to look into that, and also what's the maximum number of volunteers. I think that with having COVID, potentially, we're pretty much figuring that we're gonna have to do social distancing with this event next year. I mean, we can do it that way. So if we don't need to, that'd be great, but you know, we can do it that way. So what are our potentials there if we stretch it out and have a few volunteers? So yeah, we're excited. But that planning will start at the end of the year. God, we're almost to the end of the year. December, probably December is where I would really like to get started on just some longer range planning. Or, you know, just to kind of start thinking about it and chunking it out, because it always comes up really fast, I feel. So.
Really, right. Wonderful. Great. Thanks. Thanks, Elizabeth. Right. Okay. Bruce, can you hear us?
I am here. I'm just listening.
Okay. We just wanted to make sure you could hear. Hi.
Thank you.
Yeah, good. You can hear. All right, good. Okay. Well, our next agenda item is a proposal from Mike to turn Transition on Tap into a monthly video podcast. Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking, you know, one of the fun things that we did at Transition Longfellow before were those monthly get-togethers.
Right.
And they don't seem like they're going to be realistic for a while. And we do have this technology for recording and putting stuff out there. And one of the things that we used to do with those is have guest speakers to come in and speak. And so it just occurred to me that it might be really fun to continue doing that, but to do them in a recorded way and just put them out on our new YouTube channel. And I'm just curious to see what people thought about that. I would be very willing to do it, have the technology and the video abilities to do it. My only concern is my time is relatively limited. I'm actually thrilled to say I'm working on a little mini documentary film right now that's going to be released in October of this year. Shameless plug. I hope you can all come to the premiere. It'll be virtual and online, and I'll make sure I let you know all about it. It's specifically about a dramatic transition in government that I helped with here in Minneapolis. And I do think that there are implications for the broader transition movement. And it really is the transition of animal control in Minneapolis and the other shelters in the Twin City metro area to the no-kill model of animal sheltering. And so it's a film about that. But my time is fairly tight, even though I'm retired and enjoying myself. But I think I probably, you know, starting maybe next month would be able to squeeze the time in to do that. And I was thinking if we did one monthly, the first one would probably be, I think a good starting point would be to interview Leslie. And Jesse Leslie was the founder of Transition Longfellow back when. We're sort of in a little bit of a leadership gap. Since she left, she is a force to be reckoned with, I'll just say. And she really sort of was the life and breath of a lot of Transition Longfellow. And when she moved out of the metro, that hasn't been the case. And so one of the reasons we've invited more people to come in is we're looking for the people to help fill the shoes, to carry the mantle forward. So, you know, that's sort of the space we're in. But I think a first one, maybe next month, would be an interview with her about how she got it started, why she got it started, what's life going on at her place now. It sounds like she's doing amazing stuff out in the country these days. So I'm just curious what y'all thought about that, whether it's worth putting my time and effort into it, and that.
A couple of questions that I have are you thinking of it like Transition on Tap, where it would be shown live and people would log in at a particular time on a particular day, and then it would be a live conversation or gathering of people?
Oh, that's, I mean, I wasn't thinking of it that way, but that's an interesting, that's a great idea. Well, I like it.
That's one part of it. Part of Transition on Tap that was helpful too is that it supported local businesses, and the local businesses we supported are the ones that are in need of support right now, because they were restaurants and bars and places like that. And so if it was a live thing, even if it wasn't, even if people watched it on a recording, the message could go with it that because this is sort of a COVID era Transition on Tap, to support the local businesses by takeout or delivery or something from one of the local places that you normally would go to or we would gather
at. Oh, that is such a good idea. Oh my God.
That offering but doesn't have
all that. That's great. Yeah.
Like go get your beer and sit down at your computer.
Yeah, well, we could announce that if people want to, the business we're choosing to highlight this month is such and such. Order your takeout food from there, and you don't have to, of course. And then people could join live. We would have maybe 15 minutes of one back and forth one-on-one conversation, and then open it up to everybody to talk and ask questions. I think it's a great idea. I love that better than my idea.
Okay, so George, what you're saying is this will be kind of just a social time, not a structured.
No, it would be structured.
Actually, Transition on Tap was kind of both of those things, really. It had a social component, but typically at the meeting or the event, the monthly event, whoever was organizing it chose the location and had some kind of a topic and invited a guest who could talk about that topic. So there was one on what to do with your old clothes, like, you know, taking your clothes and turning them into something else, kind of thing. Yeah. And there was
that's the one that Audrey organized. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
So that kind of thing. Mike, you did one, and it was about community gardening. And that kind of thing. And so
I think that's a great
element
idea
to it too, to kind of attract people. But in the era of COVID, even on the computer, it's really nice to like talk to people.
Yeah.
It really is.
I like it. I'm inspired now. And actually, if you look at the logistics of doing that, it's less work than a recorded video that you edit and put up on YouTube. You know, so that's really just a lot of fun. I think we should. I'm sold now. I think.
But if we recorded it, we could put it out on the website.
Sure.
Like you and I early on in the COVID era did a sourdough baking class and a pasta baking class or a pasta making class, and we just threw it out there, you know, free of charge, and just said, sign up if you want to bake bread with us. And we just had people in their kitchens baking bread. I mean, it's kind of that same element. And people who couldn't make it at that time could still watch it and do it themselves. And so it's kind of that same thing.
That sounds great.
Great. Yeah. So
I wanted to add too.
And by the way, can I just say, this is what, you know, brainstorming, using these meeting times for this kind of brainstorming, I think is just really helpful. It's just lovely, because I think that's a much better idea than it started with.
Right. Great. Elizabeth, what were you going to say?
I wanted to add too that if we choose a specific bar or restaurant or business and promote it, you get a crossover effect there too, with having the people that, you know, usually frequent that, or even the owners and the people that are involved in it, cross over over into the Transition Longfellow. So I think there's
Right.
there's opportunities for several crossovers there too,
Right.
which is very exciting. I like that idea, especially the socialness.
Yeah.
I think there's an opportunity to, looking at the era that we're in, like there's been so many times through the last couple of months where I've thought like, I'm so glad I started getting on the no waste train, because, you know, we didn't need toilet paper for the first like 3 months, you know, and like I got a hanky in my pocket, so we didn't need tissues. And I think there's ways to like look at the moment we're in and like tap into subjects that people are thinking about because they're at home more. And, you know, one that has been kind of weighing on my mind is like winter's coming, and like, what does that mean both socially and environmentally, if we're all home all the time? So I think it's a great idea.
And there's, you know, the request I have for the group, if I were to coordinate this each month, is to, you know, communicate with me and tell me what you would want to talk about or hear and see, because, you know, coming up with the ideas and the guests to interview and talk about, that's going to be the huge amount of work to do. And so if I can get, you know, and obviously we can interview Elizabeth about Chard Your Yard, and, you know, the value that brings to the community.
Bruce.
Yeah, we can interview Bruce. We can interview, but
Right, Bruce and Aggie were one of the initiators of Transition Longfellow, along with Leslie and Peter.
Very
good. Yes, you know, they can give you their experience, and you know, their experience with that, the beginnings.
Yeah. So I like that.
Sure.
So if everybody agrees, I guess I would be willing to take that on, and start with the first one next month. I'll put out a date, you know, I'll send an email out, put out a date, and put it on the website.
Great.
Virtual transition.
Yeah, virtual transition on tap.
Yep, right. Okay, so the next.
This down. We could do a virtual pancake breakfast.
I'm cooking.
Not cooking? Is that what you say?
No, I'll flip the pancakes for everybody.
Oh, you'll flip. Oh, great. Good. Yes. My mouth's watering already.
Mine too.
Yeah. Okay, the next item, proposal for new meeting structure going forward.
Yeah.
And Mike, you had some ideas on that.
Yeah, I just thought that it would be, you know, our goal, being ultimately to assemble a larger team. Leslie always had so much on her plate that she juggled, and I don't think it's realistic for any one person to take that on, because most of us either work or have lives in other ways, shapes, or form. And so that's why I thought of dividing up. If you look at the Transition Longfellow website, the transition movement is really broken up into different categories like food, you know, conservation, water, you know, reskilling, reusing, you know, all those, you know, disaster preparedness, all those different categories. If we could find people interested in taking a lead in each of those areas, instead of being the lead, being a lead, then we could organize the meeting by giving each of those leads an opportunity to brainstorm, like we just did about Transition on Tap, about what they can do in their areas to grow and spread that more. And so the meeting would be structured more based on those specific topics, and by going around and getting reports and input from those specific leads. Of course, we first need the people to fill those spots before we can do that. But that was just my idea. And I think that that would also, you know, bring more voices to the meetings, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
I'm just curious, what does everybody think about structuring the meetings that way, if we can find those people and get them here?
Oh, is somebody speaking? I'm sort of hearing something.
Yeah, but it's not any of us.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
We're all being quiet, so.
Oh, okay, all right.
And you know, maybe
well, we you know, we have quite a list here. Food, energy, intertransition,
yeah.
reskilling or skill sharing, water, environment, community, diversity, which we really haven't. I mean, most of these things I've seen already that we really have done a lot with over the last 8 years that I've been involved.
Yeah.
But diversity definitely has not been one that we focused on. I mean, were some kind of, Leslie did talk about that, you know, towards the time that I knew her. She started to talk more about, you know, getting more diversity of people of color involved, you know.
Right. Well, it's interesting. Yeah, that's one that I put on the list. And I'm open to whatever those descriptions and categories might be. That's a new one that we don't have on the website. But it is worth noting that, you know, the global transition movement and the national transition movement consider social justice and racial equality key components, you know, of the transition movement. And at a couple of meetings, like when, I forget her name, Linda came over from Transition UK and gave that presentation here. You know, one of the weaknesses that we identified in our current system is that we are largely, pardon Jesse, Elizabeth, and company, most of us are old white people. I mean, in our movement, we really are largely old white people. We're very poorly represented by people of color. And the fact that we haven't had that on our list, I think, might be one of the reasons, you know, that because we just haven't worked in that area. And I do believe recent events in Minneapolis have caused me to conclude that we won't be successful in fully achieving the goals of the transition movement if we don't engage people of color and the minority populations that have been suffering, who will be most targeted by climate change, who are the biggest sufferers from climate change, who need things like access to good free food, like learning to grow food in the inner city. There's the connectedness between the transition movement and all those other social justice issues the connections are a lot and important. And I don't think that we can be successful in the long run if we don't pick up that piece and go forward with it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
Mike, can you clarify? So the list that you brought, was that specific to the Transition Longfellow group, or is that the greater transition towns, like the national movement?
I think it comes from the Transition Longfellow website, which I think came from those broader places.
Okay, I absolutely agree with you that if it's not there, it's not, you know, we're not working towards it. And I have had a similar kind of wake up call, like, and it's not like I haven't been involved with anti-racism things. It's just for whatever reason, here we are, and now we're moving forward, right? So I agree that this is something that is way important, and there's really, like, between all of these things, I see so much interconnectivity. You know, it would be hard to even have an event without having all those things represented. I think where I stumble is that I'm a very kind of like execution person. Like, I want to just do it. So like when I work with Transition Longfellow, I usually am in a capacity of being on a committee and work, you know, and I think that's just been how we've put on events, you know, previously. And I have limited experience there too, because really I've really been super involved in Chard Your Yard and not more of a participant in other events, I would say, or kind of a Johnny come lately, I feel.
Yeah.
Like I show up at the pancake breakfast and I bid on stuff. I don't know how else to put that, you know, like
well, I think Chard Your Yard is a huge part of what we've been about, and you've been such a central part. You know, it's so you know, you don't have to apologize about anything, you know.
Right, exactly.
Well, I mean, that's been kind of, I think that makes it easy too, is to just kind of like come in for that event, and then usually by May, that's when like life for me starts really getting swinging and stuff with the summer, you know. So I mean, for me, I have limited time between working full time and then having a family, and then you know, a garden.
So just to be clear though, so what I'm suggesting is if we could find, by putting out those categories, my goal or vision would be to create like 8 more Elizabeths who would take on their own categories of things, like Chard Your Yard is its own thing. And then, you know, somebody working on, you know, racial justice issues would, you know, lead up that area. And collectively, we would get together and talk about those intersectionalities and how our works can all support each other in moving all of that effort forward. Hence why we would break the meeting up that way and ask for there to be different leads in those different areas, but then come together each month to talk about, you know, what we can do to move all of those efforts forward together.
Okay, that might have been what I was missing, the, you know, how we're using it in the meetings. Right, that makes sense.
Right. But what we need though is folks to, like you were suggesting, Mike, is to be a leader in one of these areas and work on that and report on it, you know, at each meeting.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah.
So today we don't have to decide probably, you know, if any of us want to be responsible for, you know, working in that area. And I would say working in that area could be as simple as, say, like Elizabeth does, have this one big event for the year. And then think about, you know, what's maybe content that we could put on the website promoting that and some education around it. You know, basically all the stuff Elizabeth does for Chard Your Yard, you know, if each lead did that, that would immediately add like 8 events to our annual calendar of events and schedules and things, would bring in content for our monthly Transition on Tap events and things. And it could just build some nice synergy and energy together by doing it that way.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Well, I see that the Transition on Tap is kind of fits into the like the community kind of thing, right? Which I was going to take the lead, do the lead on community maybe, but
okay, that's great.
Well, but I think that Transition on Tap maybe covers it on a monthly thing here, so I wouldn't, you know, be averse to taking one of the other topics, you know.
Well, and like, maybe today we don't have to get into the details of who wants to do which part, but just I'm just curious if people think that organizational structure would be helpful to us, because honestly, I'll just say it again, since Leslie left, we've kind of been, you know, floundering a little bit in some of those areas. Chard Your Yard has been great. The website is still going. Facebook is still going. But our other events, we haven't really been doing. You know, we got hit by COVID. There's all kinds of reasons why. But
but before COVID, I mean, I was, you know, after Leslie and Peter left, I picked up the monthly movie and potluck thing. But of course, now we can't do that in a group sort of way. So, but anyway, I mean, it isn't like we weren't doing things, but since COVID, that's when we've kind of been floundering.
Yeah.
Right.
I wonder if, maybe Mike, if you could talk about it a little bit more and how the structure might vary from where we're at right now with how we kind of organize ourselves or not, versus kind of more of a future vision. Because I think I'm just having troubles jumping from where we're at now to incorporating these different, I mean, not that they're not incorporated, but, you know, just really calling it out like that and how that could work. Because I'm very, very interested and curious, because I agree. I think that whatever we've been doing, we need more of it, right? And that's really how it kind of felt with Chard Your Yard too, is that we had some super dedicated people, but it was a small core group, you know, and most of them were there for the Chard Your Yard event. And however, try as I might to try to kind of get them more included into Greater Transition Longfellow, just has been elusive. So if we have the time, I would be more interested to hear more about it, especially with you.
Well, for me, there's two key pieces of it. Why I see that vision as being kind of important. Number one is I think we need more visionaries and leaders from our community to join our group to help move things forward. You know, I just think that's a fact. We can't have too many, we need more. And we need to find better ways of inviting them to come into our group and participate as leaders. And that means we need seats to fill, to put them in, and a general sort of structure or guideline that they can feel that they can get into. And so giving them topics, at least a guideline of topics, and those don't have to be cut in stone or anything. Like if somebody came in and said, well, I've got a passion for something that isn't on that list. I'm trying to think of one and I can't think of one. But if it fit into things that we thought were important for the transition movement, we could just say, sure, come on in, join us, but jump in and with both feet. It gives us a structure to put them in so that they can come and participate in a leadership role to help bring things forward in our meetings and on our website and on our Facebook page. And if we don't have that, then we don't have a lot that we can invite people into. And I think that that's largely why we haven't had a lot of new people coming in, because we haven't been doing that.
Right. Well, I think that we've been living with COVID for a while now. In the beginning, I think it was kind of like everybody was just scrambling and everything was just so new and a whole new world, a whole new reality. And people have just been trying to figure out their lives, their basic survival kinds of things. And maybe now we're getting more used to living this kind of life. People can maybe start to think about fitting something like transition into their lives.
I would agree with you that there's a familiarity about it. We are going into another school year, and I think that's going to hit people hard in terms of figuring that whole landscape out. People who have children, I don't know how they fit that into their lives. It's amazing to me that parents are able to incorporate that, but they're facing it for another year.
Right.
And then kind of hearkening back, Jesse, to one thing that you mentioned is winter. We have not had this experience through a winter, and I think it is going to change the psychology of it, at least, because people already in this state, at least I and a lot of other people say, we get this claustrophobic cabin fever, during the darkness of winter. And I think if COVID really does break loose the way they anticipate, even if the you know, the cases don't go up, adding in the uncertainty of cold season and flu season and all of the other things that I have a sniffle, is it COVID or not? You know, that's gonna, I think, affect the psychology of people that might make some of these kinds of online gatherings help people through just
Right.
the transitioning, the immediate transition that people are experiencing, you know, winter with COVID and isolation. And people might get creative about different things to do in winter. You know, for example, when we're all bundled up in our winter gear, you know, can we do a nature walk? You know, because if it's cold enough, people are going to be wearing masks and a whole bunch of other stuff anyway. Or, you know, cross-country skiing lesson for beginners. You know, just something like that, just as ideas out there. People might come up with things that are not in a category, but might come up with ideas just to connect people, because they have this need for it now that may not be there for them the way it has been in previous years. And so things might develop along the line where transition could provide an access point to that. And it may not necessarily mean that the person who takes that on has to reinvent it from scratch, but might be able to connect with somebody who like can do that stuff. So like if it's a cross-country ski thing or a nature walk, there might be somebody who does that or has that knowledge who can just put that together.
Great, yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea. Yeah, people have passion for that kind of thing and want to you know, share those skills and get people involved in that. That's great.
Yeah, I'm curious if COVID really goes on. So much of the beginning of the winter season is Thanksgiving and Christmas and all the other holidays that gather people together. Those are the two primary ones, you know, probably. But there are a host of other ones that come about during this time of year.
Halloween.
Yeah, all of those things. How are they going to differ?
It's going to be really different. But anyway, that's, you know, gets us back to our topic is, and we don't have to decide today, but I do think it's important that we organize and plan for and structure ourselves in a way that will help us achieve the goal. Because, you know, we haven't had a lot of organization or order or planfulness coming into our meetings. And that's not an insult. It's not, I'm not saying that as a means of, you know, insulting anybody. It's really not an insult. It's just, you know, an observation. You know, we have what we have because of the way we've been. And if we really want to move forward, I think we have to plan for that, put a structure in place for it to achieve it. And if it's not the one I proposed, then let's pick another one. But I think we need to have something, some sort of structure and organization in place that will lead us in that direction.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree. Yes. Yeah, I think we've lost some key people early on that were kind of pushing things along, and they've had to drop out for different reasons. So yeah, we were just scrambling to kind of, you know,
Yeah.
what are we going to do now? You know, I mean, it's, you know, right. But yeah, I think with you know, you two, Mike and George, you really, I think, injected a lot of new energy. Thank you very much. And
no worries.
Technological knowledge, you know, with the website and everything, it's been really, really helpful.
You were going to say something, Elizabeth?
I was just going to say that despite COVID, despite somewhat because of our political situation, but the climate crisis is not, it's not like we hit pause, right? And I think that there's a lot of people out there with passion, and I think there's a lot of intersection there with social justice, and it absolutely is tied together. So I think that focus needs to be, I mean, I think it's important to have all these different kind of areas, but I would be afraid that, or I would want to have some sort of a focus that's going to tie us all together and kind of bring us together. Like, this is the passion. Like, we're transitioning to a new world, even though we don't want to, you know, and how can we help everyone get through? And I mean, a lot of people think that this is a big wake-up call to people. This is like a taste of the collapse of the food system. What can happen, without being like alarmist about it or anything. But I think that there's a lot of energy there that we could tap into as well, to get people passionate and interested in working with Transition Longfellow.
The isolation is bringing on a lot of loneliness, I think, and you tap into that. Got to build community that we don't have now.
Yes.
And I want to add to what Jean was saying, that Mike and George, I really appreciate your energy, especially this conversation of doing the committee heads type thing. Like Jean said, people have come and gotten on the steering committee in the past, and all of a sudden they're gone. And how do we attract and keep people? How do we get that good energy coming in and keeping them? In the past, there are people that saying, "Oh, what about a workshop on something?" You know, and we say, "Well, come to the meeting. We'll help you organize it," and they disappear. So, I think your energy, you two guys, it's much more positive and it's much more forward motioning. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Yeah, it's fun. It's the whole idea of transitioning is really important to us. We've been in the lifestyle changing of transitioning our lives for a long time.
Yeah.
And I'm convinced every single thing that we do on the list makes our lives better and makes our communities better. And I think that, you know, the more we can find ways of sharing that, the better. So.
Yes, every time I pick up bread on Monday mornings, I really admire your little garden space up front and how much you get out of that little space.
We get a lot. We get a lot of food out of our garden.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm hoping for another 60 jars of raspberry jam from the front yard this year.
But anyway, so you know, and maybe we can just table that conversation. But it's the structure of the organization and how we bring the vision forward, I think, is critical to where we're going to go and how we're going to do it. Because, you know, lacking that, I don't think we will achieve as much as we can.
And I think you're so right, Elizabeth, about what you said in terms of that the whole climate change thing. It's still, you know, coming and accelerating, and all of that, you know, all that requires us to do in terms of changing how we live in the world and with each other is exactly what you said. It's coming faster. This is a wake-up call. And,
I would love that to be. I would love that, George. I would love that to be a topic of a transition on tap. You know, that we can discuss, because I really don't have many people in my life right now who I talk to about any of that. You know, the transition sustainability stuff. And I'm needing that more and more. And I mean, I'm needing that a lot right now because it's really missing. And, you know, just, I mean, I think we need to get some activities going real, you know, within the next month, because otherwise the, you know, energy that we're generating in this meeting tonight, you know, I really want that to coalesce into something concrete that I can look forward to doing. Okay, we got the next transition on tap thing, but that's what, in September, that's, oh, I mean, if it's a month from now, I mean, that's a whole, you know, I'm really looking for something to happen soon.
Yeah.
You know, and
all right.
Maybe I need to organize that.
Yeah, very good. Well, since we're not deciding on the meeting structure going forward, and I don't think we need to, because it's not like we're going to have these team heads at our next meeting. But I do think we should continue having that conversation, and continue inviting people to take on those causes going forward.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
So one of the items on my list, I don't know what you have next, but I would like to get to the potential resolution.
The resolution, yeah.
And I would actually like us to vote on that so that we make it an official piece of business. If it's passed, we can publish it on the website, and I could send that to the mayor and the city council members, etc., on that topic.
Okay. All right.
And does anybody have a copy of the resolution?
I do. I printed it out.
Would you like to read it?
Sure.
All right. And I'm proposing that I'm proposing it, but I don't have a copy of it. I'm proposing that Transition Longfellow agree to a resolution that we can publish on our website, which is in effect a request or an endorsement that our city officials engage in the equivalent of a truth and reconciliation action. And I'm curious if everybody understands what I mean when I talk about truth and reconciliation, but it's really about assessing the damage done due to systemic racism in our community, and then finding a way of bringing reparations, making amends for the wrongs that have been done. And Jean will read the exact wording of it, but basically there's a bunch of whereases saying that whereas systemic racism is real, and whereas it's damaging in all these different ways to people of color, and whereas this has been going on for a long time and the damage is real, and whereas on the national stage there's almost no action happening at all in this area, we're asking our local leaders to take initiative to make an assessment about the policies, practices, and actions of our local municipality that have been damaging. What are they? What is the actual, you know, objective assessment to what that damage has been in an objective terms? And how do we make restitution to, you know, communities of color that have been harmed by that? Because I don't believe we can go forward you know, with making restitution or building bridges between those communities until we find a way of righting the wrongs that we've made. And so that's the resolution. Now, Jean, can you read that's the behind it. Can you read it?
Read it word for word here. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Longfellow Transition Group's resolution on systemic racism. Whereas systemic racism is a real and pressing issue in our nation and community, which negatively impacts our community. And whereas the wounds inflicted on our community due to centuries of systemic racism are deep and affect many aspects of life. And whereas the systemic racism has disproportionately disadvantaged people of color, economically, educationally, medically, and other ways. And whereas Longfellow Transition Group believes we cannot be a completely whole and equitable community without correcting these issues, involving or including resolving disadvantages caused from the past. We believe a substantive and meaningful truth and reconciliation process should begin in the United States immediately. And whereas action on this topic has been lacking nationally, despite efforts in the US Congress to initiate conversation around this issue, the Longfellow Transition Group hereby requests our city leadership to begin actively engaging in a process to meaningfully assess and quantify the impacts of these issues on people of color in our community, with particular focus on behavior, policies, and practices of the City of Minneapolis government, and methods for making restitution to communities of color for those impacts.
So clearly it's a non-binding thing. It's really just a request of our city leaders to take it seriously and do something about it. And so I'm going to—
Yes, I vote yes.
I vote yes.
I vote yes.
Oh, yes.
I definitely vote yes.
Yes.
I don't know if I can vote, but I'd vote yes.
Yeah, yes, you can. Anybody who shows up can vote. All right.
Yes.
All right, there you go. Motion passes. I'll get it on the website tomorrow and get it out to the mayor and city council tomorrow. And I may
Great.
And I may send a press release, just a word of warning.
If people,
Andrew Johnson showed up at one of the Chard Your Yard work nights and stayed
really?
for about an hour. So he knows what we're doing.
Who did?
Wonderful.
Andrew Johnson.
Yeah, he went to the build night, and then we had oh my God, why can't I not remember her name?
Patricia Torres Reyes.
Yeah, Patricia Torres Reyes. At the actual
She showed
event,
up at the work day.
Yeah.
that's wonderful.
Anything that we need probably from Cam Gordon, he would support us. I just interviewed him for the documentary film that I'm working on, and he is just such a nice guy. So anyway.
Well, he was notified also. I mean, Leslie put it out to all the politicians of the Longfellow neighborhood.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm assuming Jim Daphne too would.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
I actually know Jim Dabney's son, so I might be able to reach out to him.
yeah, Emily, I think, contacted all of them, and it all depends on their schedules.
Yep.
So yeah, I think we had
Emily.
I think we had Daphne scheduled, and then there was a last minute change in his schedule, and he wasn't able. I can't remember exactly, but yeah.
Great.
We have the support.
He's a great guy. Yeah, I like him. Yeah.
So, all right, thank you very much. Would you have another? What's our next agenda item?
Oh no, that's it pretty much.
Okay.
Other than our next meeting is on Wednesday, September 16th, unless anybody has any other items they want to discuss.
And I'll just say, since Bruce wasn't here earlier on when we talked about our event, that we're not going to be able to do because we don't have enough people here to do it. It's a game that requires bodies. And we ended up taking more time in our meeting, I think it was productive time. Thank you so much, Jesse, for coming. I'm so thrilled to meet you. Yeah. Is there a part of this that you're interested in plugging into more? What's your heart?
Yeah, I'd have to look a little closer at what all of the stuff is, because I was just kind of perusing a little bit as we were talking. There's a lot that sounds really interesting. I think, the Skillshare stuff is super interesting. Events is super interesting. Individual changes that folks can make to their own lives. All of that stuff. I fancy myself a bit of a DIYer, so that's
great.
Right, you can teach us some stuff that we don't know.
Definitely.
The mechanical aptitude.
Do you know how to make? Jesse, do you know how to make plum jam jelly?
My husband is the cook. Huh? My husband is the cook in the family, so I bet he would be very interested in plums and making something with plums.
That sounds delicious.
I got all these plums that I gotta
do.
Yeah.
George is the jam maker. Are you kidding me? You know, every year we started doing this thing last year because we got hit by raspberry borers really badly.
Yeah.
And he does all our canning, and he was all paranoid that we weren't going to have much in the raspberry department last year,
and we didn't.
And so we got more than we thought, though. And so we started urban foraging. So we branched off into urban foraging, and so we started finding elderberries and aronia berries.
We put the word out on Nextdoor, I think, or something, and people were like, "Well, I have this bush. If you want to come over."
Oh yeah, Nextdoor is great for that.
Yeah. So if you've got plums, and this is something else that you guys can all help me think about this, but it's I'm really excited about two things. The sharing library on the website, I think I want to make some changes to it. I think it really is. It's going along nicely. People are using it. I love it when they do. I would like to see more stuff added to it. And when you need stuff, just always think about it, that it's a thing that's a resource out there. But I wonder about these things like, I've got a bunch of plums. Can we share resources? We just hooked up with somebody who's got bees.
Yeah, a friend of mine with bees.
And they've got more that they're gonna end up getting more than 100 pounds of honey out of their hives. And they've never harvested. This is their first year harvesting. And so I've offered to go help them process their honey and swap out sourdough bread. So we're gonna get a huge stock of, honey. And I'm trying to find a way of using that sharing library. It's almost like kind of a skill sharing library too, a DIY, skill sharing library. I've got, I've got surplus plums. I've got a bunch of honey I need to harvest. Those kinds of things to bring people together to make better use of our community connecting and all of that stuff.
My latest project is collecting acorns off of our tree and turning it into acorn flour. So we'll see how that goes.
You're ambitious.
And if that works out as a DIY, I'll definitely put that information out there. I'm really excited about it because I wanted to do it since last year, and I actually am collecting. We have this huge oak tree in our yard, and so I'm collecting these things to try and do it. And so I'm trying to learn it on my own. But that's the kind of thing, the DIY that I think of, is that kind of skill sharing where people have these skills that are, that are probably going to be in greater need in the future than they are now. Right. And trying to get that information out to people and share that information with people.
Well, I was thinking of trying to maybe do a little video while I was making my plum jam for the first time, and just, and having that, putting that somewhere,
That would be great.
George can help you with the jam and the jelly for sure, because he makes it with every kind of fruit you can imagine. He does peach. He does. Yeah, we're going to be getting our peaches from the CSA, and so we still have jars and jars of raspberry and peach jelly from last year.
Oh my goodness. Right. Well, I might be connecting up with you, George, on that.
Yeah, and the more we do, the more we learn.
Right.
So it's like, all of those things. Well, you grew up on a farm, Jean, but it's all those things I imagine people learned when they, who grew up on a farm, and I didn't. So it's like, I need to learn it now.
Yeah, well, it was a long time ago. I watched my mother make, we had choke cherries. I mean, we had just, and my mother made choke cherry jam, which was absolutely fabulous, but that was a long time ago. I don't know. I'd have to start from scratch.
Yeah. Our other project now is we've taken up knitting for the last half year. Now we're into knitting socks to figure out how to knit socks.
I'm doing wool socks for winter. Thick wool socks.
Well, good for you.
You're
good for you.
I have to buy some socks.
I learned how to darn socks. I don't do it very well, but I extended like a whole bunch of socks. And I started that in the pandemic. Like finally I had enough time to sit around and darn my socks.
I managed to reteach myself how to crochet. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Well, we used to have a quarterly mending circle where we would get together and bring our mending and, you know, but maybe we could have
that over Zoom.
We could do it over Zoom, or even, you know, when it's still nice out, maybe 2 people could get together, like say in my backyard, and just, you know, or you could do it by Zoom too and get a lot of people, you know, and share.
Yeah, that would be interesting to expand your like stuff borrowing. I don't remember what you called it. So is it a lending library?
Yeah.
And it's like a skill library. Like I can sew a lot of stuff. I have a lot of experience there. I have a lot of sewing stuff, especially trims, because that's what I do, like buttons. But I mean, it would be interesting to kind of get that going too.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that would be a way that people could come together, even if it's through a Zoom, or you drop off something that I hem for you, or you know, that kind of a thing, and then you give me a loaf of bread, or you know, that kind of a thing would be great.
Mom, you could do your
Yeah. Great. Wonderful.
On how to make pads.
Oh,
like
menstrual pads. Yes, it's the best thing ever. Probably not a great. I'm always trying to tell my girlfriends. I actually told them all at this girls' night out we had. I like burst out and I'm like, I have to share this with you.
Right.
They could be a big deal.
It's huge,
people
and they
need it, and there's so much waste in
those
the
are
world
those essential
like,
things.
Reusable pads and period products. There's so much waste. It's awful.
Right.
Yeah, and then you have the
I'm not a female, but as soon as my brain goes there, I think, oh my God, what kind of chemicals are they putting in that stuff?
Oh, I never thought about that.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Antibacterial and whatnot, and also the multinational companies that hoisted on to third world women who, you know, it's kind of like you're rising up out of the stigmatism of menstruating and being a girl and everything, but at the same time, there was like one of the shorts I think from last year was it last year or 2 years ago from the film festival, focused on that, but they were actually making their own. But you know, it's kind of like, I don't know.
Well, that's a good top. Well, for good girl topic. You know, it could be a great Skillshare thing.
Absolutely. Actually, my mom has made products for my 80-year-old father as well. So goes
like depends.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. I know, because I mean, all that stuff that they use to make those depends, you know, and it's like diaper, you know, like those, you know, throwaway diapers, you know, same kind of thing.
It's also really expensive to have to keep buying like giant packages of them every month when you can just have like a set of them that you wash, and it's really nice.
Yeah, and I think it kind of transfers right into mask making as well. You know, that would be another Skillshare that we could do.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, very good. I think that you said that's our agenda list. Does anybody have anything else they want to talk about? And we'll see if
Mike, I am going to be adding a whole bunch of tools to the lending library. And put them to use. I'm not using anything anymore. And if you need an extra 2 hands with that honey project, let me know.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just willing, you know, I need things to do besides weed in the garden and make jam.
Well,
jam maker.
I was just so excited to find this, opportunity, because it has been a really long time since I've had my hands on a hive of bees.
Yeah.
And I don't really know what I'm doing, but to be a helping hand to somebody will be really fun for me
to learn
and
a lot.
Yeah, and then to be able to swap out the honey and the bread. I mean, it's just such an exciting thing for us. Maybe I'll do a DIY on coffee roasting. In our disaster preparedness, high on my list is coffee. How do you have coffee?
Yeah, you got my attention.
Without coffee. And so when I discovered that the green coffee beans will preserve for years just at room temperature, they don't go bad. They don't start decaying or deteriorating until after they're roasted. So you can store huge quantities of green coffee beans. So that's now my new thing. I keep a minimum of 25 pounds of green coffee beans in the house.
And when we were figuring out our solar power generator, what outlets in the house, which circuits we wanted, I'm like, the one with the coffee grinder.
Yes.
You wanted the ones on there. Because we have to be able to grind beans.
Well, I just learned something great. Green coffee beans last forever.
You just have to know how to roast them, and it's just a very fun thing. And maybe I'll do a little online class about coffee roasting, because I'm convinced that would be in terms of disaster preparedness and sustainability, it's a great thing. I'm actually growing coffee in our solarium now as a grand experiment to see if we can to see if we can produce our own coffee beans too, but that's going to be years down the road. Until then, we can
it takes like 5
learn
years
the arts of coffee roasting. So.
Yeah, and then my next thing is if the oak acorn flour is a success, then I'm going to try baking with it to see how it works. So.
And if the meeting is kind of over, and just out of personal, sorry to take up personal time, but I'm really curious, Bruce, have you noticed, since you've been buying our bread, we've changed the flour and the recipe. Have you noticed a difference?
My palate is not that delicate.
Okay.
I have not. I just love the bread, no matter what you do with it. So thank you.
Well,
thank you for doing a good job.
Very good. Good to hear. We've been finding with the new flour that we have, we're getting higher rises, so it's just a lot lighter and fluffier.
Oh, maybe, yeah, okay. It has been. It come to think of it, it is higher.
Yeah, and just a lot lighter, easier to slice because it's super fluffy.
I'll be curious in winter time, because it does change with the conditions and with colder temperatures, just to see how it behaves during that season.
Yeah, but if we found this a local source of organic flour, and so it's just and it's really just the best flour we've used, so we're
wow.
thrilled about it. It's ungodly expensive, but to find a small little local flour mill that does organic wheat is just a godsend.
Where is it from?
It's called Great River Mills.
Oh yeah, down in Winona.
Yeah.
I know.
Very good. You know your flour.
I used to live in La Crosse.
Oh, okay. Oh. Yeah. Very good. All right. Well, it was really nice to meet you, Jesse. Do you have any questions for us?
Not in this moment, but I really appreciate it, and definitely will try and continue to be involved. So loop me in. All
right. Very good.
Perfect.
Yeah, and you just check out our website, subscribe to the blog and things, because whenever we post stuff, you'll get an email alert then. And you can also join our Facebook group and stuff. And it was so nice to see you, and can't wait to see you again.
Yeah, awesome.
So then you'll be notified of our next meeting then? will she be notified for our next meeting, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely.
way?
And our next, our planning meetings are this Wednesday every month at this time, at this same link that you used to get here.
Cool.
Great. Great to meet you. I'm so glad you joined us.
Yeah, me too.
Great. Great. Okay.
All right, well, I guess we're done then.
Goodbye, everybody.
Again.
Great to see you all.
Good to see everybody.
Great to see you all. Bruce, especially great to see you, and Elizabeth, and yeah.
Aggie, we saw Aggie for a second.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we saw for a few.
He's my Zoom mentor.
Yeah.
Say hi to her for me.
We'll do that. Goodbye. Ta-ta.
Hi.
All right.